All right, hello everybody, and welcome to Club Entrepreneur Podcast, where we talk to experts on our college campus and interview them to learn more about entrepreneurship. Today we are here with our professor of social entrepreneurship, and we're here with our co-host Maggie.
Hello everyone, I'm Maggie, and today we're going to be talking specifically about social entrepreneurship with our guest.
Hello, my name is Bogdan Prokopovych. I'm a lecturer at the management department, and I teach social entrepreneurship.
Awesome. So, Professor, why don't you talk a little bit about your classes that you teach here?
I teach classes that have to do with pro-social behavior of organizations, and for example, social entrepreneurship, right, and sustainable enterprise or foundations of sustainable enterprise. As I mentioned in many of my classes, it's kind of hard to separate environment from pro-social behavior, because a lot of pro-social behavior has to do with the environment. A lot of what's going on in the environment requires pro-social behavior. So those classes kind of go in parallel in terms of what they, the objectives that they pursue.
Absolutely. And I've obviously been taking your class so far this semester, and
I'm sorry.
I know a lot of what we've been talking about so far is how startups and companies contribute into their social impact and how they try to make a difference with what they pursue. And I think that's a big topic, which is a large part of why I want to have you come on here, is to talk about that pro-social behavior that various companies do, because it's a huge important aspect of entrepreneurship where most companies are just out there trying to make money. We want to make sure that the entrepreneurs that are evolving on our campus and elsewhere are taking that pro-social behavior into consideration.
Right. Yeah, no, that's and it's good to see the increasing interest for this type of activity and for this type of organizations, and organizations themselves. The large organizations that we usually, we've always looked at them as profit maximizers.
Yeah.
And now these organizations are actually calling on other organizations to to pay attention to the environment, to social issues that are important to us. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's really important that we're starting to see that change there, because there's a lot of changes that need to be made, and with the massive amount of profits that these companies are pulling in, they are really the people that are in the position to the people and the groups that are in position to be able to make that change that we need to see in the world.
That's right, and what's also important here is there's a supply side and demand side, right? And all those organizations, they want to meet the requirements of the society, right? And also, one of their interests is to be able to hire folks like you, right? They want to have to be able to hire bright young folks that will be able to take their mission kind of forward, right? And in this day and age, it looks like if two organizations, if any of you probably looking at one organization and all of them look the same, and one does pro-social behavior, I'm very positive that you probably would pick the one with the pro-social behavior, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's actually pretty interesting, because recently I'm in Eisenberg, and I placed as a finalist for a certain competition, and our prompt was talking about how specifically insurance companies could get more Gen Zers, and like what different policies and benefits, and we actually kind of talked about different policies and just like behavior of the company that would really be pro-social, as you say. So I think that's very interesting.
Yeah, that's correct. Like, how do we attract? In social entrepreneurship, one of the interesting questions that we try and, like the community that works in this field, trying to understand who self-selects to be. We've always asked who self-selects to be entrepreneurs, like different, especially in business schools, that since we teach a lot of entrepreneurship classes. And there's this discussion of nature versus nurture, right? Can we train? I remember someone asked me what I was teaching, and I said social entrepreneurship, and someone said, "Well, I didn't realize you can teach that." Right? And that made me think of how can we really teach that? And there are some there's some research that shows yes, certain things matter, like increase the likelihood of someone becoming an entrepreneur. And in my opinion, it's a bit of both, right? And it's hard to tease out. There are some attempts of using genetic data, trying to see, okay, if someone more genetically predisposed. I'm not sure how conclusive the findings are, but it hints in the direction. There is something to that, right? But I think business schools or universities, higher education, are very sensitive in terms of how do we create the ecosystem? How do we create all these factors that will help you to self-select, right? If you again, our kind of one part of our mission to make you fulfill your dreams, right? To be as happy as possible, right? If some of you will thrive as entrepreneurs, our goal is to try to maximize those opportunities, right? And so one of the questions is who self-selects, right? When I, for example, walk into the classroom and right, so we have all these bright young kids, and you wonder what's the percent will be really successful entrepreneur if we create the right environment for them. And who would thrive in employed labor, who will thrive in working for the government, and so on.
That's pretty interesting how it's almost like a selective environment type of thing. Personally for you, how did you get interested in becoming an entrepreneur, a social entrepreneur, and teaching this to other people?
Right. So I, again, as a disclaimer, I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm teaching about social entrepreneurship. So my again, there are two sides to entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurs are great. Usually, they have some individual characteristics that others people do not have. Whether for a number of reasons. And there is a theory. In theory, again, let's not be afraid of the word theory. It's some kind of mechanism that explains behavior of people, of organization. One theory is the theory of hiding hand. So I'm sure, for many of you who work as entrepreneurs, and if you can rewind back and know all the steps that you have taken, all the hardships that you may have come, the question is, would you have taken the same decision, right? And something about entrepreneurs that. Is it overconfidence bias, or is it something that over-optimism bias that people? But without it, we wouldn't have entrepreneurs, right? If we were able to analyze. And there is a group of us who will work with entrepreneurs, right? Who will fund entrepreneurs, who will create the ecosystem, right? And I feel like academic community is kind of in between, right? And that was going back to the question that someone asked me. Oh, I didn't realize that we can teach entrepreneurship or social entrepreneurship. Well, teaching about entrepreneurship, teaching about social entrepreneurship, you make people better off. Hopefully, those who will want to become entrepreneurs will be better informed. About all the opportunities that exist. And those folks who know that they wouldn't want to be entrepreneurs, that they would thrive in other environments, they also would be able to make better decisions, right? And I think it's important to have the translators, right? As academics, our role is to, my personal philosophy, I really consider important to follow the evidence-based management. Right? We need to tie the evidence to the behavior. We cannot make statements that are not based on evidence. And I believe the academic researchers, the analytical kind of part of this field is their role is to be translators of sometimes very idiosyncratic research, so the practitioners, folks like you, can use it.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting idea there. You talk about, can you teach entrepreneurship and social entrepreneurship, and for a while I wondered the same thing, and I was talking to Professor Gregory Thomas a while ago, and I'm taking the new ventures course, and I'm also taking his corporate entrepreneurship course, and I know that he was like, He's talking about how that was a question he wondered for a long time, and that a lot of people in the academic field are wondering. And he said that he believes that you can teach it, because what you can do is set people up to be prepared to be able to do it on their own when they get there. And when I take the New Ventures course with Jay Leonard, most students there are not doing entrepreneurship at the moment, but I think the way that he kind of looks at it, the way that he's expressed it to us, is that he wants to set us up so that in the future, if we were to choose to go down that path, then we'd be prepared for that. And so I kind of started to understand from these conversations and these perspectives that, okay, maybe you can teach entrepreneurship. And I think the important thing about social entrepreneurship, the way that it's at least taught in your classroom, is that, and the way that I see most places taught, is that it's building upon what we might learn elsewhere for entrepreneurship, and really emphasizing the social impact of it and the social aspect of it, which is really important, because you can teach the social aspect of it. You can teach how to make social impact, and you can teach about how to evaluate that, how to put the criteria on that, and everything else. And so if you're learning how to do entrepreneurship elsewhere, then you really very much can teach social entrepreneurship, because you can talk about all the academic side of it, all the social aspect of it, and build upon what's just more than just experience. You can build upon a set of frameworks to pursue, and on a set of metrics that you try to judge based on. And I think that that's really important, that as long as you can learn entrepreneurship, you can 100% learn social entrepreneurship.
That's well, I like that you bring the social impact into the conversation, but kind of like to add one more point to our discussion, whether you can teach it or not. Right? I think the bottom line: anyone who's learning about how entrepreneurs function, about learning about different institutional factors that impact the behavior of entrepreneurs, will be better off when they work in organizations, or when they will be just starting an organization. Just being able to understand those factors, being able to step back. So that's one of the things when, as you are, many of you pursue your ventures, right? And that's really cool. But as you are in the midst of the venture, you're very busy, and it's sometimes important to have someone to talk, to have a sounding board, right? Someone who will help you step back and look at things around, right? And as we say, to see the forest, not just the trees, right?
Absolutely.
Again, seeing the forest is not enough, right? Because you want to be an expert in your field. You really want to be very comfortable with all the details of your venture, but that's the inside the forest, right? Being able not to miss the opportunities, not to being able to have the agility to respond to all these external shocks that come to us from the environment we operate in. It's good also to be able to step back, and very often, like you probably could say, it is that you don't have time to do that, right? Because there's always the next step. Always the next step, and so it's good to have these commitment devices. So part of this, the classes that you take, like social entrepreneurship, it's an opportunity to step back and just see if we can make sense of things that otherwise we wouldn't have time to do that.
Yeah, it gives you a framework, a perspective, that even if you weren't going in entrepreneurship, you can look at different, you can look at business from a different aspect, and you can be like, what to look for, how to judge it, and how to make your decisions based on that. And I think that that's really important, being able to say, okay, this business is pursuing these things, or they're a hybrid model, and you could say you're entering a business as a hybrid model. You could be like, hey, is this living up to the hybrid model? Are they doing enough in their charity aspect? Or you could be like, is this L3C? Are they doing enough towards goals other than profit maximization? You can judge your what you're doing and the companies around you, and you can understand what you're trying to pursue based on these frameworks and these perspectives. And it's more than just entrepreneurship. It really gives you, it's really just social business, and it gives you an idea of, even if you're not going in entrepreneurship, what should businesses be doing, and how can I evaluate them on those goals?
Right, and that kind of brings us back to the social impact idea, which is, I think, very important. It's a very cool topic. It's been, social entrepreneurship has gone through like waves of different questions. One of the questions that folks at some point have been asking, what is social entrepreneurship? And they kept asking it, and I don't think we still, found a good answer. But luckily that the discussion, what is social entrepreneurship, kind of subsided, right? And we actually talking more about things that I believe matter, right? Who self-selects? What is social impact? How do we size it up? And that's what social entrepreneurship. That's what makes it social entrepreneurship very interesting, because it's very non-linear. It's very unique. If you think about every social problem that we're trying to solve through entrepreneurship or social entrepreneurship, it's unique in its own context. As I often, well, you probably heard me say, hunger somewhere in Africa or in Asia is different from hunger in in Massachusetts, in Western Massachusetts, and all these are the wicked problems, right? We, as a society, we've done so many great things, so many not great things, right? But it also, we have technologies, we have, but why can't we? We have all these supply chains that take, that bring, some metals from really remote location to, and eventually we'll have these devices. But such simple things and getting people to enough food to eat, which is their basic right, it's still, we're still struggling. And again, it shouldn't be that way, right? Given the state of technology, given the state, and that's where I believe the responsibility of a business to be pro-social. There's only, the pockets can be only so deep, right? At some point, we need to feel good about ourselves, right? And that's where social entrepreneurship again steps in as a model that helps society, right? That gives business legitimacy, right? And again, that hunger. If someone's working on the hunger, eradicating hunger in Western Massachusetts or in Africa, how do we measure their social impact? And as businesses, we usually measure it in some kind of objective metric, in revenues, in market share, in number of customers. There's a number, or any accounting metrics. For social impact, it's much more difficult, right? Because all the problems are different, and then the collection of data is so much more obscure. And it's all about communicating. Communicate on one side, and that's also I think where teaching should be important. That one side should know how to communicate about the social impact that they've created, and the other side that's listening to them should know when that communication is real, right? To be able to kind of separate the wheat from chaff, and I think that's where the research is important, where data is important. All these analytical tools, frameworks that we use should help us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to touch on something briefly before we move on. You mentioned wicked problems, and a lot of our viewers won't understand what that means. And so I was wondering if you could just touch on that a little bit, because I feel like that's very relevant to our conversation.
Right, and so wicked problems are, they come from social planning. And again, this is the concept that kind of reemerges every now and then as a new, kind of like a system theory. System theory has been there for quite a few decades, but we, every now and then we hear the discussion, oh, that's a new, there's a new way to look at it, but we've had it. It just, maybe it's a different kind of wave of the development. So similar with wicked problems, it comes from social planning, and the problems, and there are several characteristics of problems that persist, that there is no clear solution to them. So you can call wicked problems, and wicked problems that have to do with the environment, with hunger, with access to healthcare, so the right to clean environment. So all these very often manifest themselves as wicked problems. And why they are wicked? Because it's impossible for us as a society, has been so far, to fully kind of get rid of them.
Yeah, and so they're like the root problems that all other problems kind of evolve from, right?
Exactly. And that's, I like that you're mentioning the root problems. Well, because one problem leads to another problem, and that's, and again, having not adhering to basic human rights somewhere in the root problem will lead to all sorts of other ramifications in terms of use of technology, in terms of access to different benefits that society should provide people, but is not provided, right? So yeah, for root problems, root causes, and wicked problems many of these wicked problems are kind of ingrained deeply in the roots.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's pretty interesting how there's, so many different, problems and issues, and they all kind of they have little branches of severity, but as a professor, you definitely, you kind of give the tools to these, young entrepreneurs to kind of tackle different situations and completely different environments. And for you, what would be the most, as a mentor for them, what would be the most rewarding or best experience that you've witnessed with these, students as they grow? Because you've definitely been able to see their development.
I mean, it's always good to, again, our, putting the hat on, we all wear multiple hats, right? And putting the hat of educator, your success means also my success, right? And even if it's success that has nothing to do with social entrepreneurship, right, or entrepreneurship or management, right? So that's I think, and all of my colleagues, I'm sure all my colleagues will feel the same, right? So that's definitely a rewarding experience to see, especially years later, right? Because it's very that's one of the interesting things about as I'm learning. Again, I never thought I would be an educator, right, at some point, but there is a lag, right? And some of the students come back and they realize, oh, I should have done something when I was a student, right? So it's kind of gives me a lot of hope to see, to see activities like this, right? To see that the students are pursuing all these opportunities, because again, it's maximizing your likelihood of your success, and also gives you, I think it's makes you experience much more fulfilled, right? You live a full life. You don't just go to class, you do this, but also this experience is also useful for the class discussions, especially in this classes that we teach in business schools. They some of the classes require discussion, right? And many of them require discussion, and or require teamwork. In teamwork, there's all that research about how to structure the team, how to when teams work better, when teams what are the things that are preventing teams from succeeding, but at the same time, it's such an experience process, right? Without working in a team, you cannot just learn about the team. Right?
Yeah, and I love how you mentioned just taking advantage of the opportunities and stuff, because I think everybody who we've worked with in our circle of people, we take advantage of every opportunity, which is a little bit much to manage at times, but we kind of are. I kind of refer to us as we're just hell yeah people. Every single thing that comes up, we're just yeah, let's do it. Let's add it on. And I've been getting about 4 hours of sleep for every night for the last couple of weeks. But I mean, I think that's all what it's about, and I think that's a great thing about being a college student on campus, and that if your school does not have, if the school has the resource for entrepreneurship and stuff, you should 100% take advantage of that. And when I came here to UMass, I was thinking, all right, I'm going to be here for 2 years, and I'm going to go to school that's more entrepreneurial focused, and because we did not have a ton of entrepreneurship stuff at the time, and then we just started building out stuff. But at the same time, I think what I've started doing with a lot of the people that I hang out with here and that I work with here, including Maggie, is that we we just kind of build our own groups, our own resources. We've started this podcast. We've built out the Entrepreneurship Club. We're starting our Spring 2023 conference next year for bringing in experts and stuff. And so I think that it's all about what you make of it 100%, because even if the resources aren't there, you gotta find them. You gotta build what you want and build the world that you want around you. And so I think that's, a lot of people I end up trying to convince, hey, you should, you're interested in entrepreneurship, or you even have your own business, so just come to Entrepreneurship Club. We have a network of people. We're all learning from each other. We have things we do, and I think that it's kind of it's saddening that you have to convince people to come to these events and stuff like that, because this is 100% where it's all about. Is like when you leave college, you want to make sure that you maximize everything you had, and you have a set of resources and opportunities available to you that you just otherwise won't have when you leave. And so I 100% agree with you that it's all about building upon those opportunities and building the opportunities you want around you. You know, learning what you need to know, finding the opportunities, and if nothing else exists, then create it.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with that as well. You know, being a college student here, you know, obviously from experience, but reaching out and taking those opportunities, you know, taking that extra step of saying, you know, yes to a lot of things. Like, you know, if this didn't happen with this, I would have never met this person. And it's just like an entire, like, it's like a tree of things. You know, you do one thing for yourself, and then so many more opportunities open, so many more doors open, but it's your initiative to reach out and take that step, you know. And you know, you meet a lot of great people, you make a lot of great connections, and you develop a lot from the experiences that you have. And I feel like that's really important, how you're teaching that to other people, you know, through entrepreneurship. So
That's right, and I believe that's probably kind of like circles back to the question, who self-selects to become an entrepreneur, right? And that's probably, there's something about you guys that made you make those choices, right? And that's where, and I'm sure those experiences, you've had tons of positive experiences, but you've also had probably not as positive experience, but you've learned from them, right? And that's probably down the road when you look back at them, and again, I don't think it's it's an entrepreneurship topic, right? It's more like we're talking about life, but you know, you will look down and you'll say like, well, I learned what not to do in that environment and not in that situation, and when that situation comes up, I'll know how to structure, right? And so, for example, in my classes, there's a lot of teamwork, and sometimes teamwork is not. Sometimes it's very fulfilling. Sometimes it's not fulfilling. And learning how to make it more fulfilling probably is a good. Like, you try things that work for you. Right? There's no textbook that can teach you other than yourself. Like from the project that I worked on, where I had negative experience, I think I learned more than, you know, it's kind of like in an athletic game. You learn from a loss, and you forget the win very often, right?
Yeah, and you know, I think I mentioned on previous episodes that I had 2 businesses that have failed to this point. Learned a lot along the way, you know, and I think that it's great to say that I learned a lot in a lot of ways that I kind of feel like it's a cop-out answer to gloss over the fact that I did lose a lot of money on stupid decisions, but at the end of the day, you know, those were stupid decisions that I learned from, and I won't make those again. And I think that that's kind of the risk a lot of people worry about, is that they're going to like fail, they're not going to be able to make the best outcome. But I think that that's where you learn how you're going to evolve, because in the future, I'm not going for anything paid marketing, even if it's the best opportunity out there. That's not what I'm doing, because I messed up there before. And I think that being able to learn from that, even if you lose everything in the process, you will come out stronger the other side, because you can make better decisions. And I think that one of the biggest things in entrepreneurship is you learn from your experience, and that's why so many people think, hey, you can't teach entrepreneurship, because you have to do it. You have to be out there and do it. And so that whole failing and learning from your mistakes is fundamental to what entrepreneurship is, because you have to do it. You have to go out there and learn from those mistakes and make the mistakes to do it. And so I think that that's a huge thing that you talk about there. And in terms of teams, you know, I think that it's exactly like entrepreneurship is. It's what you make of it, and if you want to learn and do well on teams, you make that team work. And if nobody else on the team is going to work, you know, it can be difficult, but you know, you do what you can to try to get the team to work and to move forward and bring what you can to that team, because at the end of the day, everything in business, and especially entrepreneurship, is all teamwork. I have a business partner. We have to communicate every day. We have to do everything we can to work together. And if we're not working on the same page, we're not talking about everything, we're not going anywhere. And I mean, like, I handle the business side, he handles the computer science side. But at the end of the day, like, we were both up building the trifold presentation that we got to put together, even though that's my task and that's not his task. We do everything together because, you know, we're a team, and the team moves forward when we all move forward together.
Yeah, I definitely, you know, in Eisenberg too, they teach a lot about teamwork. They're teaching a lot about, like, you know, finding a role that you fill, whether it's like leadership or like, you know, research based, and just like really sinking into the role and noticing everyone's differences and really utilizing those in, you know, the teamwork environment. And, you know, I feel like that's very important, and, you know, teaching that also is extremely important to build up.
Yeah, no, exactly. And, there's certain components that, it's an experience good, right? And you, as you said, it's as much as you make out of it. What I think where we add value is using these tools and using the tools correctly, like the tools that you learn in Professor Thomas' class, right? Or this lean startup methodology. So right now it's popular. Who knows? Maybe it will stop being popular. But the idea is that, well, if there is a tool, can we use it to help us, right? To see if we can, again, going back to lean startup, it's used by food trucks. It's used in education, but it's also used in very science deep kind of projects where you work on a very very complex scientific problem upstream, right? Where you don't know how to commercialize, but you try to put that thinking into this kind of relatively rigid model. And at the end of the day, it's a way to ask questions, and being able to ask those questions correctly, being able to connect the dots, that should increase the likelihood of success, right? Of your venture success. And, so that's where I think I also I'm becoming more and more interested in what role technology plays in this. Like, we've used technology to navigate streets, to do all these wonderful things, right? For entertainment, and how can we help technology help us make better decisions, right? So we know that there's technology it can write a text that it will be difficult to discern that it was non-human that wrote. But I wonder, like, with all these ideas, can we somehow use technology for social innovation, right? Can we use it for our benefit, for the societal benefit?
Maximize those experiences in teamwork, because it's a lot of what's in business school, and a lot of people think it's like fluff, but it's very important to being able to do good business is to be able to work in teams. And so I think that having that ability to make the team work, and if it doesn't work, learning what you can do to make it work, and doing everything you can to learn the most from those experiences is fundamental, because it will allow you to be able to do things in business you can't do without those teams. And even though the team might not be working, you have to do what you can to make it work. Yeah, absolutely. And just to briefly just wrap up the team's discussion, I think that you mentioned how it's a tool, and I think that a great thing about that is that, like the Lean Start method, the tool comes with so many different things within it that's important to just recognize there. Being able to work on a team comes with the ability to communicate effectively, the ability to collaborate, the ability to manage other people, because almost always one person's managing the set of tasks. It's the ability to divide up work and being able to specialize in each task and stuff, and being able to work on that team develop and making most of those teams. Really, it's not just learning how to work on a team, it's learning how to do all these different things which help that team move forward. And all of these skills are critical, because communication's everything from being able to communicate effectively with the people around you that you're working with, to being able to communicate with prospects and being able to sell and being able to do all these different things, in business. It all relies on these critical skills that are developed in teamwork, which is why, a lot of people wonder, why is teamwork such a thing in business? And yes, teamwork's such a thing in business, but it's not the only reason why it's taught in business schools. It's because it develops all these critical skills that are also necessary in business. And so being able to maximize on that really is where you learn how to do those different skills. If you don't take advantage of the team, and if you just have an apathetic view towards the team, you're never going to develop those skills to be able to excel in your business pursuits.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that too. And just from I bet from all personal experiences, whether it's through class, whether it's through a job, but working in a team, you can either get the job done, and maybe you have a project at the end of it, maybe you have a good grade, but if you really delve into what you're working on together as a team, if you really have passion for what you're working on, whatever topic it is, yeah, you come out with a project at the end, you come out with a grade, but you come out with so much more after that. And I feel focusing on teamwork and the different qualities that, being in a team can really bring out is just so beneficial in the end, and something that, people really grow from. And not only just in teamwork, but, the personal pursuit of finding finding out like what you can do, like your abilities, and I feel like that's really important as well. Self like growth in that process. Self growth adds to the overall growth of the entire team.
No, that's right, and again, putting my academic hat on, all these like experiences that you have through all these activities that you self-selected yourself, right, into, will help you, process the material that you are exposed in classroom differently, right? For example, org design, right? The failure of the team sometimes can be prevented through some org design mechanism, right? Distributing the tasks or being aware, going into partnerships. And at the end of the day, again, as a society, we want you to succeed. We want those ventures that have social impact in mind to succeed. And it is to the detriment of the society if there is if the two brilliant scientists who came up, like let's say with mRNA technology, right, or any other like life-saving, very important technology, if they cannot work together, and just not because of the sometimes personalities, right, and it's inevitable, but sometimes it's just structuring the relationship, right? And that's where again, being in the midst of it, it's hard, right? So it's the idea of this reflexive learning, being able to step back and just look at things with the being calm.
Yeah.
I definitely agree with that. And another really important thing too is perspective. How people look at something, how people look at a problem, how people look at the relationship they have with the other people, and really pulling it right back to the professors that you teach these young entrepreneurs these skills, and just reinforcing the importance of that and the emphasis on that you put. But for you personally, what have you learned from you definitely come in, your professor about entrepreneurship, social entrepreneurship, but what have you learned so far while teaching, whether it's from your students or just yourself?
It's a very good question that I keep trying to to find answer for. I think there's a saying, the best way to learn to teach, and I'm not sure if my opinion is only N of one, right? But I learn a lot from the folks like you, from folks like you making something very successful, having different ideas, but also where I learned a lot from asking questions. You ask questions, and what's really unique is that you do not have the same background as I do, or those people who wrote those things that we ask you to read that they have. And you ask those questions, and that gives it a completely different. Even if the question, even if I cannot find answer to that question, it may make me think about the question that I didn't think before. I think that's very valuable.
I mean, I grew up with both my parents being teachers. My dad was a teacher, and he still is a teacher to this day, teaching physics. And so I always grew up on the idea that you should ask questions, and so I always ask questions in class, and that's where my dad says he learns a lot of his information. And he used to teach AP Physics, and he actually had to drop AP Physics because he was getting asked so many questions that he had to think about, and it was just too much work for him. But that was a big thing for him. Is like he learns from these questions he gets asked, and it helps him being able to develop these different perspectives on these different things, because something he always looked at through this one way, but then some student asks what about this other thing, and then he has to like start to evaluate that other possibility and stuff, and I think that's a big thing there, and that it allows you to be able those questions that you have in that dialogue you get with other people, just as much as it is in teaching, it's also important in business, because it allows you to be able to get these different perspectives, which is why during Entrepreneurship Club and during other events we bounce ideas off each other. And I know we talked about in class, we talked a lot about incubators and accelerators, and I work in the incubator here a lot, and the big thing that I get away from that is that I have other people in there that are entrepreneurial focused, and we get to bounce ideas off each other and ask each other questions. Somebody, I'll say something and somebody will just be like, well, what about this? And I'm like, oh crap, like that completely changes everything. Like I could do that and then I could just completely pivot in this way, and all of a sudden my like 3-year vision of my company is completely shattered and changed in a different direction. But that's like really valuable, asking those questions and learning from other people and those dialogues that you have. And so I think that that's great that you say that that's like a big point of where you learn there, because I think that's a great way for other people to learn as well, and for them to look at the opportunities to learn. It's not just from academics, it's from, you know, everybody and everything around you, what you can take advantage of, who you can talk to, and what you can learn from them through those discussions that you have with them, the insight and the different perspectives that they share with you.
That's right, and what's interesting is it's important for you to have that environment, right? And there's some, you know, again, research, some work being done, and how do you create that environment? Well, water coolers, coffee machines happen to be very important.
Yeah.
Copiers, right? All these things where people, and again, there's a value to that people meet, people talk to each other, ask questions that they wouldn't be asked otherwise, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely feel like, you know, asking questions and just like having other people like look at like what you're doing, you know, between the team, or maybe it's not even just a team, but like talking to someone else about like what you're doing is very important, because, you know, as I said before, like having those different perspectives, look at what you're doing from like different sides. I feel like it's just very important to see that and have that, because, you know, from experience, it changes a lot of things, you know, and in the end, it's probably like the best outcome, because in my opinion, like the more that other people see and the more feedback you get, the more questions and the more things that are thought and like talked about, it just really results in like the best. So
Yeah, I mean, like, my startup is fundamentally different from how a discussion I had. Like, I was at ULaunch back in the fall, which is where my business partner and I started on a team back in high school. We came up with this idea at a competition, and then we won, and so we decided we were going to pursue the project, but we never did. And then in ULaunch this last fall, we went to it again, and we brought the idea again. And when we were there and we were developing it out, somebody was like, "So how's it different than like a Facebook group?" And I was just like, "We will have AI." And that's how we got that whole. That's our entire competitive advantage now. Is what I came up with on the spot there to answer that question. And that without that question, though, we would still be pursuing something that's completely the same as any other chat group. And I think that's that's fundamental right there. It's those questions that you get from other people. It changes everything for your business. It allows you to consider things that you never did before. And that's really the whole reason why you get co-founders and everything like that, is so that you can all share those ideas and kind of get this little pool of ideas where all the ideas that are going into there are in the pool, but they also just all affect each other and create these like these hybrid ideas and these, you know, metamorphosis that's in there, of where everything just kind of evolves together. And by having other people around you, the number of ideas does not increase linearly, it increases exponentially, because you all just kind of like, you know, you throw ideas out there and then you start creating these like in-between ideas, and everything like starts getting out there and getting, you know, building upon each other. And that's huge, you know, being able to recognize those opportunities that you never saw before, but now somebody else sees it, and now you're like, oh, I could do that, and I could do this too.
That's right. Yeah, no, that's having the sounding board, and I think that's our role, to provide you guys who committed yourself to University of Massachusetts Amherst, to Eisenberg, to provide that ecosystem, right? To provide the ecosystem where you would feel safe to express your idea, right? That where people would be respectful and helpful in terms of asking questions, listening to it. Right? So that's our role. And again, from what I see here, it makes me pleased, right? That you guys taking advantage of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, definitely too. When you think about like, you know, entrepreneurship and social entrepreneurship, there are so many important values and things about it also that can be applied to I feel like it doesn't have to be applied to just business, but like the teamwork aspect, it could be applied to so many different things, you know, so many other disciplines. I feel like just having those fundamentals that, you know, that you teach, I feel like are very important for just overall, just, you know, really anyone can really be an entrepreneur if they want to be a social entrepreneur.
No, that's right. I cannot agree more. You know, in management, we borrow a lot of concepts, management and economics, from like from sciences. Some, there are a number of interesting concepts that kind of migrated into management that we teach, or into entrepreneurship, and it translates into our personal lives. And so we talk a lot in social entrepreneurship about mission, and social mission is an important tool for organization, and very often we take it for granted. We don't pay attention to it, but it communicates something. And where it kind of these days where I see more and more importance. Again, I'm Ukrainian, and again I'm taking off my academic hat and putting my yellow and blue hat. Something about the mission that we all have our personal missions in life, in families, and whether we can articulate it well or formalize it, or whether we can. And it's interesting for me to see how the entire society right now in Ukraine, whether outside of the country or inside the country, somehow is just driven by a mission. Like there's one mission: how can we bring peace? How can we defeat aggressor? And that's what people they're trying to. And I think where mission is important for an organization, it helps you not to get distracted. And that's when, like in social entrepreneurship, why mission drift is important, because a distracted social enterprise is not social enterprise. Like if that's our tool, and that's what we should focus on, right?
I think that's a huge thing that makes great founders, is that they're strict with their mission, what they want to do. The vision is flexible, but the mission is strict. They're going to do this, whatever it is, and they can do it in a variety of ways. And that way they're going to do it could change over time, but they're still pursuing the same mission there. And I love that you brought up Ukraine, because I think that's a great example right there of teamwork, right, in action, right? Everybody working together to being able to hold that up for so long and doing as well as that they're doing. They are purely just an environment of teamwork and collaboration, and just purely pursuing their mission as much as they can. And I think that's a great way to look at things there. And I think that's very relevant to our social entrepreneurship topic today, because that's a very big social issue going on at the moment. And so I think it's important that you think about things in these aspects of teamwork and everything else. But I think it's also important that as you brought up Ukraine, that I think it's important that you look at these social aspects that are happening around you in these social events, and what your business can do to being able to help those, because that changes all the time. And pursuing one thing in your social, what you're pursuing as a business, your social impact, may not always be the best strategy. If you see an opportunity to expand that social impact, or maybe nudge that social impact in a different direction in the time being, because it's going to be more impactful, I think that's an aspect and an approach that people should be doing. Maybe I'm donating towards the food bank right now, but right now there is a bigger social issue going on, and I can move my social impact in that direction to be able to create a bigger social impact, because that money is going to be much more impactful in this area versus where it was previously going. And so I think that being able to decipher the various social issues going on and decide where your social impact is going to be, and being able to navigate that issue and modify it over time is huge for social impact, because the same amount of effort in one area is not going to yield the same amount of results in another area. And we talked a lot about that in class, about how you have to look at that environment around it and the ecosystem and everything that's going on, and evaluate more than just the effort that's going into it. There's so many different things that have to be evaluated to be able to determine how impactful it's really going to be.
Definitely. And that impact too, like from whatever you're doing, definitely comes from your mission, because the mission of the team or the person is, the core. It's kind of like what you thrive off of, and like just your intention. And so that leads me to bring up a question for you, and you can answer this either, from like a professor's side or from just a personal side. What would you say your mission is?
Well, so probably, that's a good question. And on the personal level, mission, like, of course, probably would be harder to neatly articulate, right? I think somewhere deeply inside we all know that mission, right? to love our family, to be good to others, right? So, and as an educator, when I put my educator hat, I have a different mission. It's not in conflict with my personal mission, right? But it also like helping you thrive, right? When I work for an organization like Eisenberg, there is a mission that also helps me understand this is what we do. And what I like about, again, all these recent events just made me think even more and put more importance on the mission, is it's an ultimate guardrail. Right? It helps us not to do, hopefully, it helps us not to do things like in our personal life that we would, like later in life, we would regret, right? Or as an organization, it helps us. If we do not stick to our mission, it means it's not our mission. We either need to change, we need to figure out how to articulate what's the real mission. Right? And for organization, it's a much more difficult, much more complex, because you have co-founders, you have boards, you have supporters, you have customers, and that's the guardrail that would keep them aligned, right? Kind of like it helps them have that social contract that everyone says, well, that's organization that has a legitimacy to operate here, so that's.
I think that I'd just like to capitalize on that idea of the guardrail right now, because I think that's a really impactful insight right there that you shared. I never really thought about it that way, but everybody talks about knowing your why when you go into business, and in general knowing your why. And I think that that's a really great insight you just shared about how knowing your mission is a guardrail. And we talked about mission drift in class and everything like that, and how when your mission changes, it can change based on a variety of factors. So there's not, or what you're doing is not necessarily pursuing your mission and your original mission. And I think that thinking about it as a guardrail is a really great way to look at it. As this is I'm pursuing my mission, and I know my mission so that I can do everything in my power to pursue that mission, but also so that I can not do things that will be detrimental to pursuing that mission. And so I think being able to define that mission, and that's, I guess, the real value in sitting down and understanding your why and deciphering what your mission is, and determining it, writing it down, or whatever you need to do to be able to understand what that mission is really important, because, and that's in various aspects of life, because as you said, you have different missions with the different hats you put on. But I think that being able to decide, what your mission is in this aspect, and knowing that is really important, because it sets you up as a guardrail to be able to prevent you from doing things that are gonna drift you from that mission. And I think that's really insightful. I've never heard of anybody say that as it's a guardrail, but I think that's really what it is.
And it's not my idea, right? So it's the scholars, the number of scholars who study mission drift, why organization mission drift, or how to prevent it, and that's actually their term. And that's where the beauty, I think, of translating research to and helping that research be used with by practitioners, right? So, there are a number of conditions that I call, like, what are the guardrails? Well, hiring practices are important. So mission is important. There are all these things that boards, they all, if we set it up right, they should prevent us from deviating from our course. So they will also be early warning signals to us, right? Do we need to do course correction, or do we just need to completely pivot and do something else, because that's not what we should be doing, right? We care about something else, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and one other question that I had for you is, what's one really important thing that you feel like, not only just young college students, but like anyone, like people like older and more, like just anyone, just what's something that you feel like anyone should know about social entrepreneurship and just entrepreneurship in general? Well,
I think, again, all these topics, I speak with my hands a lot. They kind of fluctuate in the community. The interest to one topic increases, then over time it increases again, and also it has to do with what's going on. And I think the idea of mission, like right now, is just occupying my mind. Right? It's I was able, thanks to my my wonderful friends and supporters, I was able to go and travel to Polish-Ukrainian border and help. And again, there was all these, there are obstacles. What do you do? What do you? And to be honest, when I went, I didn't know what I was doing, right? But I had a mission, and it helped. Right? It helped me learn. It helped me be humble in terms of I'm there to learn something. Something will not work, but my mission is to help, and that's I think is like the idea of I keep using the same word, but it kind of occupied my cognitive space at this point, right? And I think it's important. It's
Yeah, I agree, and I think that being able to identify that mission, and I think that's really what's important about our campus that I really like a lot about it, is that we emphasize that social entrepreneurship aspect a lot. We have your class, we have what was the Social Entrepreneurship Club, which is now combined with the Entrepreneurship Club, and we emphasize a lot about social impact here, and I think that that's huge because we create that mission within our entrepreneurs on campus to be able to help. And I think that's I love that you phrase it just as to help, and it may you may not be successful, you may not know what you're doing exactly, but you're just trying to help. And I think that that's a huge thing because I've seen many other people that I work with doing what they can to adopt to try to help people. One of our entrepreneurs that are in our club, one of our board members, who's actually running the cameras here, Nate, he adapted his entire brand to be able to help donate money towards Ukraine, and being able to make those changes is really important. But I think that it requires that ecosystem that fosters that desire to have that mission and to be able to look at it that way, the importance of being able to help people. And so I think that that's I love that you emphasize that that's what your mission was, is to help. And it really comes down to being able to be looking at things in the perspective that you just want to do something good, and being able to do what you can towards that mission is really important. And that's really what I would, there's all this stuff towards social entrepreneurship that we talk about in class and all these technical things, but at the end of the day, if what you are doing is moving in the direction of trying to do something good, I think that that's a great step right there, and that's the first step that you really should be taking as an entrepreneur right there. And so I really like capitalizing on that you said that you just wanted to do something good, because I think that's really impactful.
Right, and I like the keyword of ecosystem, right? And that's what's important, to have the ecosystem to be able to do those things, to have the safe space that you guys enjoy, and you take advantage of it. And if I were to tell it to my kids, I would tell exactly the same thing. Take advantage of that wonderful ecosystem. And again, there are so many things that we are learning what to do better, right? But once there's that goodwill, right, there's already that's a good foundation to build on, right? And there's a lot depends on ecosystem, but also there's a lot depends. The ecosystem depends on you taking advantage of it, right?
Absolutely.
And that's, I think, what we're learning, how to translate your experiences to other students' experiences. How do we get them engaged? How do we, is it important to bring guest speakers? Is it important to have different networking events or something else? Like what really works, right? And I think we're still kind of muddling through, meaning like we learn it. Kind of like with putting the camera on the box, right? We know that works. It works right. And
definitely thinking about that idea just makes me think of creativity, innovation. And as entrepreneurs, we are huge about innovation and creativity and collaboration, and that just reemphasizes how we want to help. And you really you articulated that really well, in saying that helping, that was your goal, and that brings us back to teamwork.
Right.
Maybe they're not on literally on your team, but you're working together with whoever. You're helping the other side, and that, you're a team in that. And I think that's really important, that no matter who you are, no matter, what you're doing, is that, whoever you're with, whatever you're working towards, you're all a team. You're working together, and having that creativity, having that is just very important, fundamentally.
That's right. I think we can single out some keywords, right? Where we spoke, like ecosystem, self-selection, the mission, right? All these things that are important for entrepreneurship and opportunities, taking advantage of opportunities.
Absolutely. So we're running out of time right now, and we want to ask everybody before we end the episode, for our budding entrepreneurs on our campus, what is any advice that you would give them on pursuing entrepreneurship?
So part of it is, I guess, what we spoke about, right? Taking advantage of the opportunities. Live full life, experience it, plunge all the way in, right? And that's, I think, there's no other way to be, as I understand, budding entrepreneurs. It's like learning and also enjoying it, right? Not losing your spark. And I think that's where having the helpful environment helps you when the spark kind of flickers, helps you kind of like contain it and just keep it going, right? Or start another spark, right? All this. So that's exactly what I would argue, because there are so many things. Like if we think like all these experiences as a menu, there's so many things you can pick out when you're a college student, and even though it sometimes feels, especially during the exam period, probably feels like a long period, right? But all these years they will just fly by, and you want, like our mission in life for you to get out of college and look back and say, like, I'm glad I did that. I'm glad I had that experience, like positive experience, negative experience, learning experience, right? And taking advantage of the opportunities. Even, some people do not believe they will be entrepreneurs, but going to, there's some serendipity. There's some, who knows who they will meet. They will meet friends, co-founders, partners, so they're taking advantage of that. That will be my advice.
Yeah, and definitely I've realized that too. Just like I think we all have, we've all taken an initiative in certain things, but I've talked to a lot of different people, older than me, younger than me, professors, just to like hear their input on like, we're all pretty young, and just like hearing their wisdom about moving forward and like the future, and they all said that taking advantage of what you have, and I think we've all done that at one point in our lives, but really doing that on like a daily basis, kind of turning into like a lifestyle, is so fulfilling. You see changes in your life once you have that switch of like, oh, I'm gonna go out, I'm gonna do something, and I'm gonna take advantage of this, I'm gonna do this opportunity, and it's just from there on, it's just such a fulfilling point for you. And I think entrepreneurship really cultivates those characteristics and reinforces and emphasizes very important things, whether it's teamwork, whether it's mission, that I just think it's great. So being a professor about that, I think that's really cool.
Yeah, that's right. And opening one door opens always many more doors. Right?
Yeah. So today we talked a lot about creating opportunities and finding opportunities on your college campus. And so for anybody who's listening that's in a college campus other than UMass Amherst, if you don't have those resources, you don't have an entrepreneurship club, reach out to us. We will have our email in the description of this video, or in the audio version as well. And if you're watching the video, we'll put it up on the screen as well. But reach out to us, and we'll be happy to share with you how to create some of these opportunities on your college campus, how to create your own entrepreneurship club, and we would love to talk to you more. So feel free to reach out to us, and that's all we have for today. So thank you to everybody who's our listeners, and we hope to see you next month. Thank you.